I'm on a quest. I'm on a quest to create the worst board game possible. And I asked for help. I reached out to my local game design group and said, hey, if there was a worst board game of all time, what would it include? I got some pretty interesting answers. I'm going to go over them quickly, and then we're going to try and build something. So some of the answers that we got are pretty obvious. So starting off, we have low player agency. This is usually when the players don't have a lot of control over their actions. This can either be that things are automated, things are entirely luck-based. Just the number of choices that you have is really, really low. Next one, roll and move. Shock. A lot of people really hate roll and move because, again, it diminishes the choices that you're able to make. You just go to the place that the dice says. And in games like Monopoly, you don't really get to choose much about what the dice could be. Like, if you could choose between it being a D4, a D6, a D8, or a D20, that is some player agency versus just using the same dice every time. Next one of my suggestions. Trivia about something that you could not have naturally encountered. So, like, trivia about the history of a country you've never been to or didn't grow up in, or trivia about a genre of music you never listened to, or something like that. Because trivia games are either you don't know the answer and you're an idiot, or you do know the answer and you're a genius, and there just really isn't a middle ground. So if you make it so that every question just could not be answered by the average human being, then everyone's an idiot. Congratulations, we're on the same playing field. Next up is player elimination. This is one that is often talked about in social deduction games and how to alleviate that, because removing a player from the game means that they're not playing the game, and the point of playing the game is to play the game, I guess. Surprise. Next is Take That. So Take That is choosing a player in particular and giving them something negative. The one that I usually use as an example is a lot of games like Exploding Kittens will have something like Skip a Turn, which is pseudo player elimination. It's temporary, but it's you in particular do not get to play the game. Except for this one, I've added in brackets only punching down. So in some cases, you have what's called Kill the Leader, which is a method of preventing a person from running away with a victory early on, where you have abilities that affect the person that's in the lead greater. Like, for example, the blue shell in Mario Kart. In this circumstance, we're looking at the opposite. Imagine a blue shell in Mario Kart, but it hits the person in 8th, and everyone can get one. Fun. Next is Inflated Playtime. So something that goes for 3-4 hours and didn't need to. And then coupled with that is the Sand Timer. The Sand Timer is one that I don't like personally because it makes me anxious knowing that I both have to interact with this thing physically to accurately track the time, but also it's constantly running out and I'm in a rush. Then we have Pasted on Theme. So Pasted on Theme is when the actual like setting and characters and stuff have nothing to do with what the mechanics that you're interacting with, which can be kind of difficult to really point out sometimes. But sometimes you'll be playing a game and you're like, I don't understand why this is the thing used to represent this in particular. And it's non-immersive, which is, something a lot of people don't like. Next was an interesting suggestion. Pieces made out of celery. It's very specific. I like celery, personally. I have a feeling that if you bought a board game that had food components inside it, it's not a game, it's a snack. Maybe? Next is standard auction, which, as I understand it, would be each person can bid or pass. If they can't beat the bid, they pass. Once you've passed, you can't re-enter the bid, and then the only remaining player with the bid wins the bid and gets the item. So there's that. Runaway Leader is one. And when we have take that, but only punching down, Runaway Leader is going to be pretty easy to do. So the idea is that one player will naturally get a big lead. Oftentimes this is the one player that's played the game before, and then no one will just ever be able to catch them. And then the last one, which I thought was a strange mechanic to have in a board game, was racism. Several people mentioned this. Why are you buying board games with racism in them? I don't know that I can include that mechanically. Why did so many people think there was just so much racism in board games? Anyway, so I've compiled a list of things that should, in theory, make the worst board game, and we are going to try and build something. So let's start on our fresh page. We're going to look at the components. So we need celery, because we have pieces made out of celery. Next up is roll and move, so we need dice of some sort. We have trivia, and actually no, we have sand timer. That's an easy one to add. Sand timer, and trivia and take that, I think, is something that we would do with cards. So we at least need some poker-sized cards. I think that's probably a good start. So what I'm thinking is the first part of the play flow diagram is the trivia. And so it'll be something like first player draws trivia card. We haven't determined who the first player is yet, but we'll figure that out. The first player draws a trivia card. Oh, actually, someone mentioned something about a rotating judge. It's similar to Cards Against Humanity, so that might actually work really well here. So, first player draws a trivia card. That player is the judge for this round. That player asks the group the trivia question. Based on how accurate the response is, which is up to the judge, that player receives X amount of D6 to roll for their turn, which is now, I guess. The player who answered correctly now has their turn. They roll those dice, and then they would move spaces based on the result of the dice rolled that they were awarded from the trivia question. Okay, but the trivia question is going to be like, how many, just something really confusing and random, like how many brush strokes would it take to have done the Mona Lisa, or just something genuinely unknowable. And then the judge has to pick a person, and then on the card it'll say like, oh, a super correct answer would be this many dice or something ridiculous. And then you would move, and I don't know what the board would look like, but let's assume that we're going to include exercise. So instead of a board, we are going to have the neighborhood. And one, so the gameplay space is your nearest concrete footpath or sidewalk for the Americans. And I don't know what it is everywhere else, but here in Australia, it's very common to have segments of concrete that make up the footpath. So each of those segments is going to be one space for the dice that you have rolled. Each individual concrete segment is considered one space of the board. Great. So if you roll a really high number, you have to go for a big walk. And that is going to inflate the gameplay time. Okay. So we have one person that has moved very far. That player then becomes the next judge and draws a trivia card to ask the group. Okay, so I've yet to figure out how to use the celery yet. I get to add the sand timer. Players have until the 60-second sand timer is up to give an answer. You know what? 60 seconds is too much. You get 5 seconds. This game's gonna be stressful. So we kind of have a core gameplay loop of draw a trivia card, ask a trivia question, roll dice based on how well your answer is, walk that many spaces. And so then I need to have stuff that happens based on different spaces. And an auction. And racism. How can I use celery in a racist way? Game design is quite difficult. But I think I've covered a lot of these things. I think this game naturally has low player agency. Okay. If the concrete footpath would diverge, so this could be a T intersection, this could be a full intersection, this could just be something cutting off from it, like if there's a park, sometimes there'll be a pathway coming off the footpath into the park. So if the concrete footpath would diverge in any way, the player who most recently answered a trivia question may choose to redirect unless a player spends one of their celery pieces to instead make that choice. So you now use celery pieces to change where you're walking. Okay, now what's also really funny about this is that after the first round, there's a person several steps away asking a trivia question to everyone else in the group that probably can't hear them. So you just end up really far away. So I guess it would have to be sent via your phone or something, and you just hope that your friends will maybe catch up. But that's how it is, I guess. And so everyone's going to have their own collection of celery pieces that are used as a currency. I guess a player... Okay, so the entire group doesn't necessarily mean in the same spot. They don't have to necessarily all walk along the exact same path. So if a person far in front has to redirect, another player can spend celery to redirect that player, and then the other players can go a different path. So everyone gets really split up from each other. However, if two players end on the same space, the player with more celery takes one piece of celery from the other player. So this is a runaway leader mechanic. If you have more celery, you end up with more celery because you take celery from other people. And that's take that, but only punching down. If you have celery taken from you in this way, that player reads the next trivia card you would have read. So you lose whatever your next turn might have been. I then want a second sand timer. So we're going to have a 5 seconds sand timer and a 5 hours sand timer. Okay. After the 5 hours sand timer has emptied, completed, timed out, I don't know, the player who is closest to the starting space wins. No, I guess furthest. The original idea was to do a lap. But a player who's barely moved at all would just win if it's closest. It's the player who is the furthest from the starting space. I haven't got player elimination. Okay, if you have no celery, you are eliminated. And must follow the player that eliminated you and carry their celery for them. I'm assuming there's a lot of celery going around. Okay. This game currently has no theme, so we're going to paste on a theme. The theme that we're going to paste on is I don't know. I don't even know what would fit this weird walking down your street game. I don't know. If you can think of a better theme to paste onto this game, please let me know. I'm currently experiencing a mental block in that category. I just genuinely don't know how to ship this as something else. I imagine you could use celery as a It's like Stop Celery Thief is the name of the game or something. Yeah, that's my attempt at making the worst board game possible. I don't know how proud of this I am.